Very good.
Okay, let me.
Oh, yeah. I will.
Hello, everyone. Thank you so much for coming to Shoal Street Studio and for tuning in to today's very special class with Cal Wiersma. My name is Stephanie Griffin. I'm the Executive Director of ACMP, which, for those of you who do not know it, is a worldwide network of adult amateur chamber musicians and a foundation supporting adult amateur chamber music activities. I'm thrilled to present you today with Cal Wiersma and also this wonderful live string quartet who are going to be demonstrating throughout the talk. We have Sean Barnett on first violin, Corinne Bennett on second violin, Mirandi Hostetter on viola, and Sam Brinkley on cello. Thanks and enjoy the class.
All right, good afternoon. Are we ready? Are we good? We're good to go. So good afternoon, everyone. It's a little strange to be in this relatively empty studio, but talking to everyone. I'll try my best to pretend that you're all right here next to us. So the idea today is to talk about musical notation, but it's really sort of more than that. It's actually sort of how do we translate what we see on the page, these ink blots, these little blotches of ink, into a musical line. You know, it's a very difficult job of a composer to turn his or her musical idea into some sort of notation that we can understand. And then it's an equally difficult job, perhaps even more, well, no. It's an equally difficult job to turn that musical notation back into a musical line. Right? Like how do we sort of bridge that gap? How do we take what it is that a composer has written and in some way turn it back into the idea that the composer had in the first place? How do we decide what to do? How do we make sense of all these sort of slurs and squiggles and dots and all this other sort of stuff? So I just want to tell one story at the very beginning just to sort of get this going. So this is many, many years ago. I was playing in a festival called June in Buffalo, cleverly named festival in Buffalo in the month of June. And we were playing a piece by Morton Feldman, the great American composer. And it was I think a quartet, maybe a piano quartet, I can't remember. It was 4 or 5 of us. And we had several rehearsals of this piece, and we kept inviting Mr. Feldman to come to a rehearsal, and he never showed up. Never showed up to any of the rehearsals. So we get to the concert, didn't show up to the dress rehearsal, we get to the concert, we play, and he comes back afterwards. And Mr. Feldman, he writes this incredibly beautiful ethereal music, but he's sort of a big guy, and he's a cigar, and sort of a gruff kind of personality. So one of the people in the group said, Mr. Feldman, oh, it's like so too bad that you couldn't have come to a rehearsal to sort of help us and tell us what certain things meant or how we should play something. And he said in this very gruff voice, it's much better this way. I want to know what my music sounds like when I'm dead. It's a really fantastic way of sort of thinking about how, from a composer standpoint, right? He didn't want to teach us the piece. He wanted to see whether the notation that he wrote was enough, was the right stuff, was helpful to us. I tell that story to composers all the time because many composers who I've played their music, they say, I'll teach you the piece when we get there. Well, if you get hit by a bus on the way over, how do I do this? And how is the notation helpful to me? It's a very sort of it's a weird way to begin a class, but anyway, okay. So what we're going to do is we're going to talk a little bit first about notation and just sort of notation as a sort of basic concept. When I was preparing this class, I went down sort of the rabbit hole of the internet and started to look at all these different kind of notational systems. I just want to start off with one that's amazing. We're going to talk basically about Western classical notation. That's the notation that we understand and that we're going to play. But I just want to start off with this amazing notation. So this is Old MacDonald Had a Farm in a 9th century Chinese musical notation. That's amazing. Anyway, okay, back to what we're talking about. So, notation. So this is sort of the first kind of notational system that started in sort of Western music. This is a church notation in the 11th century. And what you can see is the notation on top of the words is basically just the contour of the line. So it doesn't tell you what pitch to start on. It doesn't tell you even how long each pitch should be. It just, I've got my little sort of fancy laser printer here. So it just tells you, you sort of go down and then you go back up again and they do this. And so there's sort of a notational system that tells you basically the contour of whether that, and I'm sure there's some other things that this means that I don't understand, perhaps like the shape of things. It's actually a very beautiful notation. So that sort of turned into this notation, which is, you see, is sort of the beginnings of a staff. But it still doesn't tell you how long anything is. It tells you pitches. There's sort of the beginnings of a clef kind of system here, right? So you probably know what that pitch is, depending on what the clef was. But again, like, sort of tells you the order, perhaps, of things, but not how long. And then that turns into this, which looks very much closer to what we have, right? So the idea of pitches of a certain length, the words underneath. Still no organization in terms of like time signatures or things like that. But you can see how this is progressing, right? And that's not so different from a piece we play all the time, right? So this is Bach G minor, first movement. Okay, that's our like brush with musical notation, just to sort of give you the idea of like what it, the struggle of a composer to tell you what it is that he or she wants. Okay. So this notational system, we're going to come back to this clearly, but this notational system has continued. So we're going to go to now, this is music that this looks like music we play, right? And you can see there's, beginnings of things like telling you sort of, how loud things are, or sort of stuff, right? Again, if we think sort of the arc of music history is an arc from composer trust of performer to composer distrust of performer, right? That composer assumes a lot to composer assumes almost nothing and is telling you everything that they think you need to hear. So here we'll go to this. This is a piece we'll come back to later. So this is the second movement of Weber in 5 pieces. And you see here like the amount of information that Weber is trying to tell you with the mute, exactly how fast. He writes words with the utmost sweetness. Every note has some dynamic or time kind of thing on it, right? It's so different from the notation before, which was just sort of an outline. Here, everything is prescribed. And this has sort of continued. I played a piece not so long ago, a piano trio, where the composer wrote in the piece, "Play like a golden unicorn flying across the sky." I don't know what that means. I don't know how to play that. But it's this, again, a struggle to how do you put into words or into ink blots what a musical line is. And then one more. So this is a quartet by Helmut Lachenmann, Grand Torso. And here's obviously a completely different notational system. And it's because he has different ideas about what he wants in terms of sound. Just a couple things about this. So this is the first violin part to this piece. You see that's there. So that's the first violin part. Above is the score, so you can see what's happening in other voices. He writes cello there, and he's sort of telling you what else is going on. One really interesting notational thing here, if you look here, that instead of a clef, there's not really a clef. There's clefs there. But here, this is a different kind of clef. This is if you imagine sort of looking down on a violin or cello. So that's the fingerboard. That's the end of the fingerboard. Right there is the bridge. And then the strings on the other side. And this dotted line is the bridge extended. And so what he's telling you here is what he wants the sounding point of the bow to be. You start at the bridge, you move out over the fingerboard, you move back to the end of the fingerboard. He uses this thing a lot. So for example, Where's the one I was interested in here? Oh yeah, here. So again, you have that part there, and so the first note is on the tailpiece, the second note is behind the bridge, then you're on the sort of normal sound, and then you go here, and then you go in that direction. Again, he's struggling. He's finding a new notational system to tell you what it is that he wants. Okay. So, what's our theme for the day? The theme for the day is how do we take this obviously sort of imprecise musical notation and turn it into music? And this comes out of a struggle in my own life and in my teaching life. This sort of overemphasis, in my view, and I want to make sure that everyone understands this. This is my view. The overemphasis on the what of notation rather than the why of notation. The tendency to see notation as somehow sort of a black and white. That's what it is. The reliance on notation rather than what I think to be much more interesting and other ways of thinking about how music is created. And this is not just in my teaching life, this is in my professional life too. I mean, people will say, you know, I have a sforzando there, and my response is, well, congratulations, like what kind? Or I have a dot on that note, I'm proud of you. Well, how long is it? I have forte there. Good for you. How many decibels is that? How loud do you play it? So what I want to talk a little bit about today is just how we might use some other ways of thinking to come to musical decisions where the notation is the beginning of the conversation rather than the end of it. So I want to start by going back to the Bach. Here's a musical notation. How would we do that? Okay, so I'm going to go back to this Bach. So I just want to take a look at this very quickly. So there's things in this notation already that are actually incredibly musical. So even just the way that Bach sort of writes, right? You understand what I mean? Like there's this sort of shape to that he shows us. Mm-hmm. And there are two things I want to just talk about in this piece, and that is sort of the first thing we're going to talk about in how we're going to discuss how to organize a piece. So the first thing is, and maybe I'll go to my next slide just to say this. So these are the main ideas today. So the first idea, and perhaps the most important, is that dissonance is different than consonance. The way most Western music is organized is that we start one place, we go some other place, and then we come back. And the idea of consonance as a home, as sort of our safe place, and dissonance as a place to which we go, a place of discomfort, of disconsonance, of not being able to stay there. My teacher, Mr. Waterstein, said you should never taper a chord you can't bow after. So the idea that dissonance is a place of unease, and then we come back to consonance. This is an incredibly important principle, and in my view, almost sort of, is more important than almost anything else. So let's go back to the Bach. So how would we play this? There's not a single dynamic marking. He writes adagio, that's about it. But how else? How do we look at this and make a line? How do we decide how to play such a thing? So the first thing, it seems to me, is that we have this chord, which is a G minor chord. Interestingly, the key signature is not G minor. Interesting. But we have a G minor chord, and then we come back to a G minor chord here, right? So we start there, we go some other place, and then we come back there. So that's the first thing we have to think about. That we're home, we go some other place, and we come back home. So this chord, even though it looks sort of like that chord and this chord, is very different from those. The second thing is, look what he does with the rhythm. So he starts here and there, and at the very end, right before the dissonant chord, he speeds up. That's all of a sudden faster. Again, right before the dissonant chord, he speeds up, and then back into the consonant chord, he slows down. So he's telling you that he wants this chord to be one thing. We want to move towards this one of dissonance, By the way, this one is a D major chord, except it's in second inversion, so it's not as strong. Then he does the D major chord, the 5 chord in root position, so that's the stronger one, and then we come back home. So we look at this, it looks all exactly the same, but he's told us a lot. First of all, just by dissonance and consonance, and also by how he does the rhythm. So I would play something like this. So we're going to start on that G minor chord. Then we're going to sort of move to the next one. So we're on a dissonance there. Another dissonance. And back to consonance at the end. That's a way of looking at a notation that tells you very little in terms of like actual dynamic markings or articulations or anything else. And all of a sudden we have a musical line that he has shown us by things other than what we think about as musical notation. Yes, are we? Okay, I wish there were people here I could either see nodding or not. But okay, so that's how we're going to sort of be thinking about this sort of stuff today. Okay, cool. Okay, so let's talk about sort of the themes for the day. I'm going to go back to that slide here. Okay, so the first one is dissonance more than consonance. The second is mode matters. I'm going to tell another story here. So this is many years ago. I was hired to play on the soundtrack for the movie True Grit. It was a Coen Brothers movie. It was the remake of the sort of the old John Wayne Western. And in this movie, the basic idea of the movie is this young woman, she's 10 or 12 years old or something like that, and she hires this cowboy named Rooster Cogburn to kill the man who killed her father. That's the story. And they have sort of a troubled relationship, this young woman and Rooster Cogburn. But at the end of the movie, Rooster Cogburn has done his job. He has killed the man who killed this young woman's father. And there's this scene in the movie where they part. They've spent the time together, and now they're going their separate ways. And so we're playing the music. We're in this sort of recording studio. And we play the music, and we end on this beautiful, I can't remember what key it was, but beautiful major chord, which tells the audience that they like each other. Everything's great. So we finish doing that, and we have these like sort of headphones on, cans on, and we hear all this sort of chatter back in the studio, and the recording, the control room. Thank you. Exactly. It's good. The tech guy tells me. Good. The control room. Okay. So we hear all this stuff. So the contractor stands up, and he says, "Okay, everybody, 20-minute break." So, okay, whatever, good. So we go away. We come back. There's sort of new music on the stand. So we play, it's very much the same music, except it ends minor. Oh, I see. So maybe they don't like each other. Okay. Chatter in the cans, chatter more. 20-minute break. Come back. Now it's this, like unsettled, different, don't know, neither major nor minor. Now we don't know what they think about each other. What was interesting to me about that was that the producers of the movie knew. The film was already made. They weren't going to change anything about the visuals. But they knew that the music would tell you much more in a way than what the visual would. And by the way, no one is I can imagine, no one's sitting in the audience going, oh, it's a major chord, they must like each other, right? It's just something that we feel. We understand that implicitly. It's a minor chord. So I went to the movie. What do you think? What do you think they ended with? What's your guess?
Uncertain.
Exactly. Ended, which is, I thought, the perfect choice, actually. Right? So ended with this kind of uncertainty. So, mode matters. Okay. So, accent. And there's many of these in this music. Sforzandos, fortepianos, accents, things like that. When I was looking around in preparation for this, I saw there was a YouTube video. And there was like, what is a sforzando? Okay, so this woman says, sforzando is you put your bow on the string and you go, that's a sforzando. It's really hard and like, I thought, I completely disagree with that. What I think is that an accent, that is to say a sforzando or a forte piano or an accent, makes a note more of what it already is. So, if the note is sad, it's sadder. If it's a happy note, it's happier. It doesn't make a sad note happy. It doesn't make a happy note sad. It just emphasizes what it already is, which of course means that we need to know what it is before we can decide what that accent is. We need to have made some determinations based on some of this stuff up here before we actually can understand what that means. Fourth thing, context is everything. This is especially true in dynamics. You know, when you see a piano in the part, it doesn't tell you a decibel level. It doesn't say that's 12 decibels. It doesn't say it's 14 decibels. It only is piano in relationship to what's around it. So a piano that has a forte in its future is very different than a piano that has a pianissimo in its future. One way of thinking about this. So context is really, really important in this. There's no absolutes. There's no definites to these things. And the last one, which is in my view the most important in terms of like process, is why is way more interesting than what. What I think I would love to come out of this hour today is some way of looking at a piece of music and trying to understand, even if you can't absolutely know, why is that piano? Why is there an accent there? Why, rather than I have a dot or I have a sforzando. That, yes, that's true, but I want to know why. And I want to know what of all of these things we can use to make that particular marking into something that's more than just an ink blot on a piece of paper. Okay, so now we have these lovely people here who are going to play some stuff for us. So what I thought we would do is sort of go through, I picked, you know, there's like a billion possible examples of this sort of stuff, but I thought we would just sort of pick a few and just sort of work a little bit and talk through some ways of thinking about some of this stuff, perhaps of how to listen to it, how to rehearse it, and then how to make it come a little bit more to life. So we're going to start with a piece that every string quartet player knows, which is the Opus 18, number 4 of Beethoven. So let's just look a little bit at this first line. So we have, first of all, we know the key, so it's in C minor. And we have this line, then it goes, and there's this sforzando on this note. There's an emphasis on that note. So the first thing we need to do, if we go back to what I was saying about accent, is we need to know what kind. And then he does that again. We're going to see throughout this piece there are lots of these forte pianos and things like this, and we need to make some determinations. So and we're going to, maybe we'll play up till here, guys, right? Play up till that chord, okay? So I'm just going to ask them to play, and then we're going to work a little bit and see what we can use from these ideas that I put up, and we'll see what we can try to find out the why. Okay, so here's a little bit of Beethoven, Opus 18, number 4. Terrific, beautiful, thank you. Okay, so let's do with our first idea. So our first idea, which is dissonance is more interesting than consonance. So can everybody just play what you have on the downbeat of the first full bar? Just hold your note. Okay, so this is very much like the Bach piece that we had, which is that he starts off in this sort of, he's telling you what the home key is. Now, can everyone play what you have on the downbeat of the second bar? Just hold your note. So that's clearly a very dissonant, unsettled note. And what Beethoven tells us is that he wants that note to be more than the note, the consonant note. So I'm going to ask, this is when it gets fun, Sean, because you're going to ask questions here. So for how long is your D dissonant?
I guess for until the next beat.
Exactly, so for its duration. Okay, so what would that tell you about how you might play that sforzando?
Well, there may not be as much release during that note.
Okay, right, because it is dissonant for the entirety of that note, right? So what would that tell you, Ben, about how to play your sforzando?
To hold it as well, longer.
Right, in other words, your sforzando is not just for that one note. Your C is dissonant against the D for the whole time. And the B natural, interestingly, right? Can I just hear those three notes? Just play your C and Corinne your B and Sean your D. Right, so for the duration of that note, that is that sound, right? That tells us how long we need to feel that sforzando. You understand what I mean?
Yeah.
Okay. And by the way, in all parts, whether or not there's a sort like, you know, your C is still dissonant even after your sforzando sort of theoretically is done, right? Let's just play it maybe a little bit under tempo, like yum bum 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 bum, like that from the beginning. And I want you to feel like you hold that sforzando dissonant for its entirety of its dissonance, okay? That, which is very different from the woman on the YouTube video who said that sforzando was that, right? Okay, because that's rule one, that dissonance is more important than consonance, or is more interesting than consonance. Let's do the same thing. Play the downbeat of bar 3, play your note. Slightly different than the first one, right? Because your F is not part of a C minor chord, so that's a little different than the first one. But now play the downbeat of the 4th bar. Good. So now let's play these first 4 bars. Let's do again, just to hear the chords on each downbeat. Play the first downbeat. Now the second downbeat. Now the third downbeat. And then the 4th downbeat. Cool, it's a much more dissonant piece than one could have imagined, right? Okay, now let's play these 4 bars again with that sort of idea, that each of these downbeats has a different affect than the last, okay? I'm sorry, in tempo, good,
Yeah.
yep, good. Good, much better. Right? Do you understand the right? So the notation, the seeing of that sforzando, cool, great, yes, fantastic. But there's so much more beneath that is actually going to tell us how we play that. Okay, let's do a sort of a fun exercise here. So let's talk about the other one we talked about was this one, right? So how would we play this if it were major? Okay, so I want you guys to play this, change the key signature to no sharps and no flats, and let's hear it in major. Cool. I'm not sure I like the piece this much, but it's okay, cool. So let's see what else we would change then. Okay, so let me hear lower 3 voices. Let's start maybe at bar 7. Okay, And let's play it first in major. Cool, good. Okay, so that's a certain kind of major stroke, right? So like we're playing it off the string. Now let's play sort of what a minor stroke might be.
In minor.
In minor, good, yes, in minor, yes. So, sorry, so A flat at the beginning. Right, so just that idea that we're going back and forth between major and minor changes how we look at that particular notation, right? Like, it's, you guys all sort of instinctually played it a little bit longer, right? A little brushier than, right? There's nothing that tells you that, right? It doesn't say longer, right? But there's something, again, about knowing, hearing the quality, the mode that tells us about that. Let's do another piece. So this is Mendelssohn, Opus 13. And we're going to play just the very beginning of the fugato here. And so here's another sort of thing. This is an interesting thing about why. So you have this swell here. You have that espressivo written there. So let's just hear the little bit of this, and then we'll talk about those markings. Is this you? Beautiful. Good. So Randy, okay, so you got this little swelly thing here.
Mm-hmm.
Why is that swell there?
To lean into the half step. I don't know.
Yeah, because that B flat is a
Resting note.
right. I mean, that's the note that desperately wants to be A, right? And that's also, by the way, I think why it's longer. Right? So he's telling you, this is the note I want you to go to,
Yeah.
because that's the funky note. Why do you think, I'm sorry I'm putting you guys on the spot, but it's fun. Why do you think espressivo is written there?
Maybe to feel a little more free with the dot. Like it's getting, the note values are getting smaller, so maybe you're allowed to, I don't know, not embellish them, but lean into the,
Could be, yeah. Any other ideas why the espressivo might be there?
I think with the dots, it can easily be misinterpreted to mean that there's some sort of character change there, and I think it's maybe indicating something about staying within the same character of the longer notes.
I think you're exactly right. I think that Mendelssohn is worried that you're going to play that sort of skippy,
like dancey all of a sudden.
right? And you see these dots and you go, oh, dot, cool, right? And so Mendelssohn's like, no. It's still espressivo. I still want it, right? It's like he's reading your mind, right? Like, don't go there, right? So, yes, separated. He puts another little mark that still tells us it's a little longer, right? That slur, right? Not a real, like a short kind of dot, right? But this espressivo is like, no, just, stay in that world. Let's do it one more time. Let's feel that. So feel the rub, the tug
Okay.
of that. It's almost like that mark allows us to do what we would normally do. You know what I mean? Like we would naturally do that anyway. We would go to that note. He's just saying like, yeah, go for it.
Okay.
And then this stay in this like really sung kind of quality. think, I don't know whether you guys felt it, but I feel like that conversation we had about the why of something rather than the what of it, like that changes the way we play almost more than anything else. Right? Like why, so I have to bring out the why of it. There's no one, I can assure you, in the audience going, there's a swell on that, you know, like no one knows. But we have to show that idea there, right? And that idea there. But the talking about the why rather than I have a, yeah. And I think you're right almost also that there's a sort of a school of musicological theory now that says that in Brahms in particular, but even people before him, that mark actually has tempo implications. So like, for example, that swell means move and come back. So there's which seems perfectly normal and natural, right? I mean, that's like a human kind of thing. So that we would even maybe go to that note, you know, so, right, so like it's not, you know, but there's right, there's that kind of wanting to hold it, wanting to, you know, be in that a little bit longer. And then right, so it's still sort of touching and warm. I could talk about this stuff for like, anyway. But like almost every piece you have has a million of these questions.
Yeah.
A million of these sort of ideas. Let's go back to the Beethoven. Okay. So we talked about that. I want to do very slowly the lower three voices from bar 6. Okay. And just I want to hear the chords. So like I want to sort of hear each one of them. Okay. And we're gonna sort of make some about that tempo. And we're going to make some decisions about stroke based on that. So bar 7, I'm sorry, bar 7. Yeah, so like 3 and 4 and... Good. My teacher, Mr. Waterson, used to say great fast music is really great slow. Let's play this once like actually as a slow movement. Okay, so legato. And I want to hear harmony. I want to hear where things are dissonant and where they release, where there's minor, where there's major. And then we're going to make some decisions about stroke based on that. So maybe like, you know, like about that tempo. So dissonant, and then consonant, and dissonant, and then cool, right? It's incredibly beautiful, right? You know, it has this. Yeah, it's like it could be a slow movement. If I wrote that as a slow movement and that's the only thing I ever did in my life, I'd be great. Okay, so now let's make some decisions about sort of quality of stroke. So if we make a sort of a generalization that this minor is slightly longer than major, right? That dissonance is slightly more intense than not. So then I would say, for example, in bar 8, this bar here, that bar, I would, no, I'm sorry, I'm gonna actually like bar 9, for example. Let's do that bar. So I would play this, right? So like it would be longer and then shorter. Then, right? So like, again, like the dissonant has more stuff than the consonance does. And then the same thing, right? If it were major, maybe I'd play it that way. Right, I want to again hear the minor of that. Let's play it again one more time now in tempo, and just listen for this. Right, so we're hearing the different sort of qualities of this stroke depending on the quality of the chord. Terrific. Let's do it again. Let's get in there. Good. One more time.
Yeah.
Good. So this is the kind of stuff that we need to look at, right? Rather than what that all looks the same.
Yeah.
Right? Every note looks, and the interesting thing is like it's sort of true because it's about harmony. It's true with everybody. Right? It's not one person.
Right.
If Morandi plays that F natural there, and Corinne doesn't know that there's a G and an F together, right? You're not going to play your G as if it's rubbing against an F. You got to know that there's an F there. You see what I mean? Mm-hmm. So like the fact that she goes from a G to an F changes how you play your G. Because all of a sudden you were G's together here, and now all of a sudden there's a little dissonance on the end of that one. Because it's about all of us, then that means that all of us have to change. Let's go to another piece. This is Brahms' B-flat quartet. So let's just play it from the beginning, and we'll look at sort of some of these same ideas. So let's just play it maybe until like A or something, the first 20 bars or so. Terrific, good. So this is, I think, such a fun example of this, because we have really almost every note that's an eighth note has a dot over it, right? Like every single one. But clearly they're not, well, he says clearly to me, they're not the same. So let's do it really slowly from the beginning, okay? And let's just listen. First of all, we're going to listen for harmony. Okay? We're going to listen for where dissonance is and where consonance is. So let's do it really slowly. Like dee, bom, 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 like that. And just hearing harmonies. Good. So clearly what Brahms has done, again, is he's emphasizing the harmony that's not home. That's why that accent is there. He wants you to, this is home, that's away, we're back home, that's away, we're back home. Okay, let's do now bar 3 and 4. Same idea, right? It's just the same idea, not with everybody doing it. Okay. Now let's look at bar 11. Okay, so can we play let's just have again T like that's still eighth note on bar 11. Okay. So, of those notes, Sean, that all have accents, which do you think would be more?
Well, some of them sounded more distant too. I can't remember.
Okay, let's do it again. Okay, yeah. So right on that. Okay, actually, let's start 2 eighth notes before that. Okay? Okay.
That's
right?
what I thought. It's the downbeat.
Right. So that accent is different from that accent. Right? That's a leaned into accent.
Yeah.
This is more like a home accent. Cool. Let me hear, Randy, I want you to play your eighth notes in bar 8 and 9.
Under tempo.
You know, like in tempo maybe.
8.
Tito, 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 like just sort Good, good. Now play your eighth notes starting on the last two eighth notes of bar 12, where it says piano. So how are those different, do you feel? Like how would you think about those notes as different and why?
Well, the piano eighth notes.
No, I'm just talking about the difference in the two pianos. So like that
Oh,
piano
I
eighth
see.
notes and those piano eighth notes.
Well, the first one at 9
Yep,
is there's less going on,
yep,
and the second time there's accidentals and there's
cool,
bigger intervals.
cool. So do you think that this kind of music, so those, or, right, like, so the chromatic line seems to me to be much more like connected, sinewy,
Yeah.
right? Like, okay, so in sort of, if we make a big generalization, longer, right?
Sure.
So like this is, and then, right? Okay, so that's a really different sort of quality. And that matches, by the way, what the second violin is doing, right? So like those notes, it would seem to me are sort of longer than those notes would be. You understand what I mean? Because we have this sort of chromatic line as opposed to sort of a back and forth line. Okay, and then well, that happens again, then Corinne and everybody, and then takes over, right? Cello line takes over again in bar 15. You do what Randy was doing before, right? You da 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 dee da da, right? This is a much more sort of chromatic kind of thing. And then bar 17, Randy goes back to her sort of happy self, and you're back to that kind of stuff, right?
Yeah.
Okay, so in this first 20 bars, we have lots and lots of different kinds of articulations that all look exactly the same. That's the point. Right? Okay, so let's do it once now, sort of slowly, but trying to bring out these sort of ideas. So I want to know the why of that accent. That's because it's a dissonant, not home note, not because it's a happy one. Right? You understand what I mean? Same thing. The sforzandos are because it's sort of like a questioning note, not a. He could have put, if he put the sforzando on the downbeat, that would be powerful and like pow. This is more searching and unknowing, right? Okay, then we have just sort of lovely, sort of back and forth, right? Then we have this, the B flat here, Corinna, much more than the A, right, in bar 9, because you're hearing that dissonance coming back to a consonance on third beat. Sean does that again. Then we have this sort of sinewy stuff, right? And then we have skippy back. So let's do it like deem, bum, 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 like about that tempo, and bring out as much of that kind of stuff as you possibly can. So right. So no, exactly. So that note might be a little what?
Longer.
Exactly. Right. So maybe that's too long, Sean. That was good. That was maybe a little slightly too long. Good. That's one more time. Now Skippy. Really Skippy. Now. Terrific. You get the idea? Now let's play it in tempo for fun, okay? And bring out as many of those differences as you possibly can. And I still think that I'm sorry? I think the third and the sixth, eighth note can be differenter.
Okay.
Right. So this is the why, right? That's the I have a dot. Congratulations. What kind? What else is going on? What's the harmony? Is it major or minor? Is it chromatic or diatonic? Is it right? Like those are the much more important questions. Clearly, then that has a dot, because a dot tells you like 10% of the information, right? Okay, let's do another piece. So I want to talk a little bit about now this idea of context is everything. So especially in terms of dynamic. So I just want to look at this. Actually, can you guys just play the first 8 bars or so? Actually, maybe, play the first 10 or 12 bars or so. This is Mendelssohn Opus 13. By the way, it's not in A major, interestingly, but anyway, okay. Beautiful. So I want to look at 3 specific markings. So I want to look at the pianos. So I want to look at that piano there, downbeat of the 2nd bar. I want to look at this piano here, right? Bar 5, 6, right? And then I want to look at this piano there, okay? Now, if you look at the marking, those are all the same, right? He doesn't say anything, doesn't write a word or anything like that. There's piano there, there's piano there, there's piano there. I posit that these are very different from each other. That this one is the end of a mezzo forte sort of shape. And it is the result of a diminuendo down, right? Okay. This one, the 2nd one, has a pianissimo in its future. So I would say that one, we have to be careful that it's not as soft as that, which is the end of a phrase, right? This is sort of the beginning of a phrase which has a subito pianissimo in its future. And this one has 2 bars of down before we have a crescendo. And what does crescendo again mean, Sean?
That's the softest.
Exactly. So crescendo means soft. Mr. Lehner used to say C for soft. So crescendo means soft. So we have this piano, which has 2 bars really to go before it's actually turning the other way, right? So this one, done, right? Stating we're in A major, we're sort of home. This one, about to be a really special sound. So if we have to give ourselves some room to go. And this one, still singing, still lovely, because there's sort of 2 more bars of diminuendo to go. Let's play it again with that sort of in mind. By the way, this swell is very much this sort of idea, right, of like, again, dissonance, right? Like that's the thing he wants to sort of show, right? And now we're home. Good. Now we're singing. And now the sound. Long way to go. One other thing I just wanted to show you about this piano. Can I hear lower two voices on that downbeat, the downbeat of the third piano? Just hold your downbeat note. So that can't be the same kind of piano as that, right? There's no possible way that that can be a settled, lovely, we're home kind of piano. That dissonant note won't allow it. And if we hear that dissonance rather than see that little P, that tells us much more about the quality of that note. And by the way, he does it again, the next one, right? Sort of like he's clearly not done, clearly not ready. Let's just do it one more time, and I want to add that element to it, right?
Okay.
So that feeling of really rub there in the lower two voices between that. Okay, one more time from the beginning. Home. Now sung. And now very different. So, by the way, sorry, why is the pianissimo there?
Because it's a deceptive.
Exactly, because it's a deceptive cadence. It should go dee-dum, right? It should go back to there. But he does this really funky, cool chord, and he highlights it by putting that pianissimo there. So the pianissimo is not there because he thinks, oh, it's been 7 bars, I should have a pianissimo. It's because he wants to sort of highlight that chord. So can we do it again, the second phrase, and show the sort of the special quality of that deceptive cadence there? Now this, right, that's why it's pianissimo. Keep going. Now what quality does accent, Sean? Right. Beautiful. Okay, yes? Good. Let's do another one. This is Randy's favorite. So this is the second movement of Webern 5 pieces. And this is a completely, again, using the same kind of sort of terminology, but clearly, again, these markings mean very different things. So in a world, I sound like a movie trailer, in a world where, right, in a world where we have triple piano with a mute, double piano with the utmost sweetness, this piano is the loudest dynamic of the piece. This is the loudest thing that happens in this piece. There's molto espressivo here, right? The second violin gets it one time later. You see this at the end, Karina? Do you know what that means? Calm audible. It means barely audible. Like the last note should be sort of just like in your brain rather than actually played. It's triple piano with a diminuendo and then barely audible with a diminuendo. Okay, so we're going to do the first 4 bars, and we're just going to think about this sound world in which piano is the most. Good. It's hard to think about that way, isn't it? It's hard to think of piano as like an outwardly expressive right? Like it's
Yeah.
it's hard to imagine that as, and like,
The top.
yes, as the top.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Especially with the mute on, like you feel like you're already.
Right, right. So it's all contextual. You know, these markings, these dynamic markings, they're all about what's coming next or what we're just in. They're never a decibel level. They're never, it's much more about what's around it, what the color and the context is. Cool. Okay, and we'll do, I want to do one more. We'll be almost done. We can do some. So we're going to do, this is Mozart K387, Mozart G major. And here, this is one of my favorite markings, this marking right here. What the heck does that mean? So let's do this. We're going to play the first like 8 bars or so, okay? Okay, cool. So, Sean, ideas. What's that? I mean, so what is he trying to get at there? Why is he writing that? Why is he?
Well, it can't be serious. It's definitely a
Right.
joke.
It's not like a note is piano and a note is forte and a note is piano,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah, I don't know.
It's like a limp.
Yeah, it does.
Like there's a hole in the wheel of the cart.
Right.
It's like,
I think he's trying to. It's like his way of writing a swell. Right? Like he doesn't have swell. He doesn't have that in his arsenal, right? He does like that's not a thing that Mozart ever writes. So it's like a. It's not. Right, it's not that. It's his way of, again, like emphasizing a note and coming, right? So it's not a forte, accented kind of forte. Also, really interesting, the second time at bar 7, everyone, the other people in the band are written forte, and the cello line still does the same thing, which clearly couldn't be true. Otherwise, we would never hear that note. We would never hear the downbeat, right? So he's just trying to tell you the relative strength of those notes. You see what I mean? It's not like that one's soft and that one's loud. It's like that one's more than that one, and that one's more than that one. In whatever dynamic we are, that's how this. And you sort of did that. I mean, you guys didn't blast out of the water there, right? And it was still clearly that there was a cello tune there. Okay. So try it one more time and just feel that it's more like a, you know, like that kind of push rather than you're actually kind of sort of popping it. Terrific, good. Okay, now we could do this for like days, right? I mean, you sort of take every passage from any quartet in the Western classical literature. So I want to just do one thing. I'm going to spring a surprise on you guys. So I want to play the last 10 bars or so of the first movement, and I have a couple of questions. So I want you to look at, for example, this forte, the end there, and then you have a piano here, right? And then you have that same thing again, and you have a forte piano, and then you have a forte on that beat, right? So I'm going to ask you a question. This forte piano, that one right there, this is before the end, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 bars, okay? That forte, of that forte piano, do you think that is more or less than the note after it?
More?
Why?
It's more dissonant. Or it's like
I agree.
yeah.
So that emphasis is more than this forte coming back.
Even though there's not a piano after that.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Right. Also, this forte piano, yes, but it's still dissonant for the entirety of the note, right? So we don't want to go back to nothing. I think the reason why this one's written differently, by the way, is just because there's an end of the line there.
oh.
Right? I think it's just because like that one, he had a quarter note tied over. It's still a half note. You see what I mean?
Yeah, I see.
Yeah.
So it's, again, it's like one of these really confusing kind of notations, but that's the same as that.
Yeah.
Same chord.
Totally, yeah.
Right, okay, it's just because he was on the fourth beat rather than the second beat, so
Yeah.
we had to tie it over. Okay? And then I want you just to play the last, we're gonna do the last 1, 2, 3, 4 bars, really slow. And we're gonna just listen to the chords. So let's start actually maybe on the pickup to the fourth to the last bar, about this tempo. Ba da 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 dum, boom, boom, boom. And I just want you to listen to the chords, okay? Ooh, okay. So they all look exactly the same. That one, that one's clearly different. Again, another deceptive cadence, right? So we have to do something different there, not because of the notation. Notation looks exactly the same, but because of the harmony. So let's show that one a little bit more. And also let's show, by the way, that there's a pianissimo in our future. Okay, same tempo. Exactly, okay, yes? Cool, let's play now from, let's do like from that bar. 161, okay? So again, we're gonna think about the dissonance as more than the consonants in both cases, and then listen to the harmonies, and then pianissimo. Like so, diddle-da-da-dum, yum-bum-bum, 2, 3. Okay, I've talked long enough, and I'm just going to go back to this slide of the main ideas and just sort of talk about, just reiterate them one more time. So, I don't care whether you have a dot, I don't care whether you have an accent, I don't care whether you have a line, I don't care whether you have, what I care about is this. Dissonance is different than consonance. Am I in major or minor or not, or neither? I got an accent, cool. It's more of what it already is. What is it? What kind of note is it? I'm going to do more of that. Context is everything. Piano, fantastic. What's next? What's around it? And the process of why, trying to understand in some sort of way. I'm not implying that somehow we know what the composer thinks every single time. What I am interested in is the conversation. Why do you think he put that there? Right? Why was that pianissimo there? Because it's a deceptive cadence. Cool, let's show the deceptive cadence. That's what people in the audience are going to hear anyway. They're not going to know that a pianissimo was there. They're going to show that. That's what we're showing. Okay, cool, yes? Do we have questions from the assembled throng? Stephanie, do you have any, you probably have 19 questions. But anyway.
So far, no questions in the chat. I want to ask David, do you have any questions?
Well, the spring is a great thing, but we don't have it yet. Spring quartet. Yeah, that was always a great question about the fortes and pianos in the minuet.
Yeah.
It was very confusing. So it's actually just some kind of a,
I think it's a way of writing a swell,
yeah,
right? It's not,
four
it's not
swells in a row.
exactly, but also like all of a sudden he's in 2/4 rather than in 3/4. Or again, like the notational stuff is so imprecise that we have to start asking the questions of why would someone write something like that. That's the, now, there may be other, I mean, I'm sure there are other people that would play it differently, and that's, of course, fine. But for me, the more interesting question is why do you think that's written that way? Rather than somehow assuming that the notation tells you everything that you need to know.
Also, the hairpin with the Brahms.
Right.
Very
Same thing.
big.
Yes, exactly. That same sort of idea. Exactly. Yeah. Are we good?
There's no more questions.
Okay. Cool. We have answered every question. Thank you, guys. Thank you to this lovely quartet for doing this for us. They were great and huge game. All right. Thank you, everyone. And if you want to ask me a question online, you can, email me and let me know. All right, thanks so much. Great. Thank you, guys. You were great.